Anyway, good evening, everybody. And we will be finishing at 7:30 on the dot because everybody wants to get to football. Eric, if you want to stay online, that's fine with any members, especially the Scottish or the Welsh part of the country, because I'm going to be watching TV. But welcome. And tonight's a little bit different. We're not going to be talking about Jewson's magnet windows, boilers, or anything like that. We're going to invited Erica, who does the in-house solicitors, and she's my solicitor as well. She looks after LMPG and she looks after me personally. When she took me on, I don't think she realised that I'd be so much like hard work, because I'm always asking her loads and loads of questions. Erica, yeah, she went, oh God. So, Erica, thank you so much for coming on board and agreeing to do this webinar tonight. And I've got so many questions to ask you, but really, I'd really like you to come and introduce yourself to the LMPG membership. And for people who are going to be watching it live and watch it over the next sort of 6 weeks in the recording.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's a pleasure to be part of the LMPG team, and it's certainly a pleasure to be your lawyer, Nick. So you do ask me lots of questions, you do keep me on my toes, and that's absolutely fine. That's just how I like my clients. So thank you again for having me. It really is a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to be telling you all about what we can do for you today. On the note of sticking behind at 7:30, Nick, and the membership, I will be scooting off if that's all right. Bang on past, because I actually, my husband's a very lucky man, and I shipped him off to Wembley tonight with a ticket to the semi-final. Oh. And as a result of that, I had to draft in my parents at the 11th hour to look after the kids so I could be here with you guys tonight. So they're doing the bedtime routine, and my dad said to me as I walked back to my office, please be back on time because I need to get home to watch the first half, and I want to do that from home. So yes, I will be with the rest of you watching the semi-final. So without further ado, Nick, are you happy for me to go ahead with my presentation?
Absolutely, you go ahead.
So I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me for 2 ticks.
And you're the person who can get the tickets for the final then?
There you go, you know, maybe. I pulled some strings for tonight, I have to say. So all I am going to say is that I am well and truly in the good books. So what I bought myself tonight was a ticket to the semi-final for my husband, but a ticket for myself to give him at least 12 months worth of grief and earache and DIY. So that's what I'm looking forward to. So we shall crack on. So thank you again for having me. I am Erica Morales Perez, and I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate and commercial lawyer, and I am the person in charge of Virtual In-House Solicitor. And I'm going to tell you how that came to fruition in a moment. But first, I want to tell you that we're a little bit different as a law firm, and we are changing the world's view of lawyers one client at a time. We're also, in doing that, hoping to bring legal services home. So I'm going to apologise now because I am going to try and throw a few football gags in here. And I was actually told a really long time ago when I started presenting in business that if you're not naturally funny, you shouldn't try and do jokes. So perhaps this is a really bad time to do it, and they're not necessarily jokes, but we're going to try and stay on theme tonight just to keep it interesting. So yeah, we're bringing legal services home. And the reason we're doing that is because we really do want to change the world's view of lawyers. We want to do things differently. We want to bring quality assurance. We want to bring customer services to legal services. And we most importantly want to take the fear out of instructing lawyers. I don't know about you guys, but even as a lawyer, I've instructed lawyers in the past, and I have this awful rising feeling of, oh my goodness, how much are they going to charge me? What's my final bill going to be at the end? So it's really, really important that we charge fixed fees, and that's how we operate. We're going to tell you how we're doing that via LMPG membership organisation as we go through this presentation. So I've already mentioned who I am. So I am the founder of Virtual In-House Solicitor. I founded this company a few years ago now, but prior to that, I was actually in business. And my real passion is business. So I love being an entrepreneur and I love practicing law. But way before I was a lawyer, I started life in business about 20 odd years ago, in fact, in the information technology sector. And I was a business manager. So what that meant in normal terms is that I was in IT sales, and I loved it. I really did love it. And I dealt with, in the organizations that you can see at the bottom of the screen there, where I was a business manager, I dealt with quite a lot of lawyers. And in my Microsoft days, we used to call them sales prevention because they were really difficult to deal with, really difficult. So you'd take them an opportunity and they'd say, I'm sorry, we can't do that. You know, the computer says no. So we found it really tough to work with them. So when I qualified as a lawyer, and it felt like the natural course of going into business law, which is the area in which I practice, I wanted to do things differently. And I felt really passionate about bringing business and law together and actually offering business legal services that work across all of the verticals and across all of the disciplines in law as well. Because just because I'm a business lawyer, it doesn't mean that I can only offer business legal services. So myself, together with the rest of my team, we offer multi-disciplines practice across virtual in-house solicitor. I am also a landlord myself, so it's very fitting that I'm here because I've experienced many things as a landlord. I've experienced lovely tenants, I've experienced terrible tenants, and everything in between. So I understand firsthand the importance of getting the right advice at the right time and it being appropriate to what you're doing. So as I said, I spent about 10 years in information technology. I worked with massive organizations, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, and then I qualified as a lawyer. And I've been in the law now for about 10 years as well. So I'm absolutely on a mission to bring customer service to legal services. And as I mentioned earlier, to change the world's view of lawyers, one client at a time. So a couple of little facts for you here. You may or may not know these, and this was from a government website source. 46% of landlords who were surveyed in this particular survey viewed property as a better investment than any alternative investments. As a landlord myself, I can completely relate to that because I feel personally through my experience that it's probably a better return on investment than having your money in other things. So I completely see why that is. There's 2.66 million landlords in the UK. And I understand quite a few thousand of you are members of LNPG, and I can understand exactly why you are. But in 2020, there was a fall in UK landlords by over 220,000, which is the lowest it's actually ever been in 7 years. And changes in the law are amongst one of the biggest concerns for UK landlords. So I can completely, again, understand why there's such a drop in landlords in the UK, both changes in the law and changes in tax that make those really very profitable investments not always as profitable as they could have been in the past. So that brings me on to my next point, which is why are legal services important to landlords? Now, obviously, as a business lawyer, I would say that they're really important, but there's a number of reasons why. There's actually over 150 reasons why it's important for landlords. But I've picked out 4, and I'm going to try and categorize them for you just to give you a flavor of why you should be taking legal advice as a landlord. The law is one. I said there's 150 reasons, and 150 was not plucked out of the air. There's over 150 pieces of law, so we would call that statutory provisions, 150 pieces of law that apply to landlords. Who knew there were that many pieces of law, let alone pieces of law that apply to landlords?
I must be breaking them all.
I'm sure that's not the case. But the penalties are very, very severe. So you can have financial penalties. You can be fined by your local authorities for not complying with those statutory provisions, with those laws. You might be sued by your tenants for injury, for example, if you're not correctly insured or you haven't got the right tests. One survey, when I was conducting some research, showed that something like 38% of landlords surveyed in this particular survey didn't have a carbon monoxide monitor in the property that they let, which of course is a legal obligation. That example forms one of those 150 pieces of law that govern you as landlords. So it's really important that you're familiar with the very basics of what you should be doing. You might think that PAT testing is obligatory. You might think that having a gas safety certificate is obligatory. And in some cases, you would be right, but in others, it may be optional. All of these things are governed by law that you should be considering. So we've mentioned fines, we've mentioned being sued, all of those are financial, but it could be much worse. You could find yourself in court and being sent to prison. In the last 5 years, one particular landlord in Manchester was jailed for 45 months by Bolton Criminal Court for fabricating tenancy agreements, taking deposits from prospective tenants, all for the same property, and then telling them that they'd failed credit checks. He was also ordered to pay £100,000 plus £125,000 in court costs, and he was banned from being a company director for 10 years. So the risks are huge. Not only did it cost him an awful lot of money, not only did he end up in prison, but it also potentially ruined other areas of his business life, whereby he may have been a director for other businesses and in his main career. So it's really important to comply. You don't want to be scoring an own goal when it comes to complying with the law.
Oh, I don't believe you just did that. I don't believe you
absolutely crowbarred that one in.
Erica.
So there's more. Come on, we've got to keep it light. This is law. This is law. The other thing I wanted to mention is the property itself. We know that 46% of landlords buy their properties for investments. Further surveys suggest that often those investments are purchased to augment, to increase people's pensions in later life. I know that for me personally, being a landlord and the properties I have is because I want a better pension when I eventually retire from law. So it's really important to ensure that the property is in the condition that you want it to be in. So you want people to know about the repairs. How do you go about them? What will you do? What are the maintenance provisions? Is it shared? Are there shared areas that need to be looked after? What are the tenants' obligations? Can they decorate? Can't they? What's the use? Are they permitted to run their business? All of these people who were working in offices or in business premises who are now working from home, is that allowed? Do you need change of use? So there's lots and lots of things that you need to be considering. And you certainly don't want to find yourself offside when it comes to making it clear what tenants are supposed to be doing.
I like that one.
Thank you, Anthony. Nick, you're not leaving, are you?
No, I'm trying to get the ball.
Excellent. So the next one is cash flow. Again, it's an investment. We want to be making money out of our properties. The last thing we want is for them to become millstones around our necks. We want to be able to make as much money as we possibly can within the realms of staying within the law. And we all know if we're running businesses that cash is king. But you want to be treating your rentals like a business. And to do that, you've got to manage and mitigate the financial risk. So you want to absolutely limit what those losses might be. And you want it to be really clear all round with your tenants, with your agents, who you're using, who you're employing, potentially to manage those properties. So it's really important that everything's lined up so that you're managing that cash flow. Because what you don't want is your star player, your Harry Kane of your property portfolio, becoming your financial millstone. And then finally, certainty. One of the things that I always talk about when it comes to any legal documents is certainty. In English law, you don't have to write down every contract. There are certain contracts that you do. If you're buying and selling property, you may know that you absolutely have to do that in writing, but not everything has to be in writing. But if you're treating your property portfolio like a business, then put it in writing because it gives you certainty. It sets out the process. It shows that you're following the process. It gives the tenants processes to follow. It gives you control. If you want to terminate your contract, it makes it really clear if you have a proper AST in place, for example, if that's appropriate for your property, and it's really clear for your tenants what they have to do, what if you want to serve notice, what you have to serve upon in terms of grounds, how you go about doing that, and when you have to do it. So certainty, termination is one really good reason to make sure you have contracts in place and you're getting the right legal advice. I mentioned ASTs. But of course, there are other documents, there are other tenancy agreements, as I'm sure many of you will be aware. So which one do you use? When do you use it? Why is it different to an AST? Do you know why those things are? And are you putting the right tenancy agreements in place for the right properties? But what you definitely don't want is to be given a red card by a tenant because you haven't followed process or because it's not properly documented.
You just knew that one was coming.
Sorry?
Itself,
Just knew that one was coming.
You don't want to leave the decisions to somebody else, so take control yourself. So how do we do this and what services do we offer? We're going to be sharing some price lists shortly because you do get preferential pricing as LMPG members. But there are 4 pillars really of the services that we're going to be offering. Conveyancing, as you would expect, and that is commercial property conveyancing, residential property conveyancing. We can cover leases and freehold properties as well. We can look at property management for you, collective enfranchisements, because they can also be quite complex. We can provide you with your ASTs. We can provide you with your Law Property Act tenancy agreements. Essentially, we can give you the right advice at the right time for the right property to make sure you're getting exactly what you need. But this is a really key area when you are obviously purchasing and finding the investment properties. So we already act for a number of clients who have investment properties. We can advise you before you start, we can advise you throughout the process, and then obviously we will help you and see that through to fruition. What we do is we help you essentially project manage that process. So there's always somebody on the end of the phone to talk to, and we can answer any questions and concerns that you have.
Does she understand, Anthony, there's 5,000 members going to come at her all at once?
Well, at the beginning, she said she hopes they're all like you, Nick. So I wouldn't want that.
Not at all.
Already said. Me out.
So you know, I'm a woman of many skills, but I couldn't take 5,000 calls in a day. So I do have a team behind me. 2 of my team are actually here with us this evening, so they can give a wave. So I've got Eloise and I've got Lavinia. They both work with me here in my office. They will be part of the team that will be supporting LMPG members as well. And I'm delighted to have them on board. I know you'll all be very happy with them as well, as I am.
Are they here now?
Yes, they are.
Well, tell them to come and say hello.
They're not able to at the minute, Nick.
Oh, they're not. We'll say hello in a minute. Okay.
Say hello at the Q&A. I'll introduce you. They'll give us a wave. So the second pillar I want to talk to you about is contractual documents generally. When I first developed the list of contractual documents, Nick said to me, what are all these things? Because there are many guises that contractual documents for rentals can take. I've mentioned ASTs, but there are room lets. There are domestic garage licenses. You might let your car parking space if you live near to a station. All of these things should be documented. I mentioned earlier that we don't necessarily need to document contracts in English law. And an example of something that wouldn't need to be documented might be a domestic garage license or a car parking space. But I can tell you it's really hard work when something goes wrong to be trawling through all of those emails from months or years ago to try and identify what the original deal was and who said what at the time of doing the deal. So it's really important to document it. And if you're running your portfolio as a business, it will certainly always add credibility to the business itself. I've listed shareholder agreements here, and this is something I do a lot for all types of businesses. But if you have business partners in your businesses, in your limited companies, or you have a partnership, for example, you may want to consider regulating that agreement, that arrangement with your business partner. I've had to wind businesses up because shareholders fall out and can't repair the relationship. And the most recent one I did was actually for a bathroom fitting company who were doing incredibly well. They were hitting all of their financial targets. The two shareholders and directors fell out. They couldn't make up. They could not find a way forward. So one of them came to me and said, Erica, what can we do? And I said, well, you can either spend up to £100,000 on litigation trying to take the other party to court, or you can sort it out, or you can wind up your company. So we made a proposal to the other party, and he said, I'm not selling my company to her over my dead body. Wind it up. So we wound up a perfectly good business because they just couldn't sort it out. If you have a shareholder agreement or a partnership agreement in place, then you don't have that issue because your shareholder agreement would set out what happens if you fall out and how to get out of it. So that is what we call avoiding a deadlock situation. Again, this all comes back to the same thing. Make it really clear, have certainty, write it down. GDPR for landlords is another one. Does everybody on this call know that you have obligations as a landlord with regards to GDPR? Do you know what GDPR is? There are data protection obligations that you have to comply with as a landlord. And there are fines if you don't. So the first thing is you should be registered with the Information Commissioner's Office. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's easy to do, but so many people don't do it. But if you're a landlord, you have to register. And because you are processing the data of your tenants, you should be processing that correctly and in line with what the law sets out. So it's really key. If you haven't done it, think about it, come and talk to us. We do that for you for a fixed fee as well, and we can take it all off of your hands. What we can give you, and I should have put this in its own pillar, is essentially peace of mind in every one of these categories. The third one is estate planning. If you haven't already and you've got properties, you might want to consider what you're going to do with those properties in the event that you pass away. It's really important to consider this because not everything is automatic. And if you don't have a will, then you would die intestate, which is a big, big problem for anybody you leave behind. I remember when I was studying law, one of the tutors said to me, Erica, even if you have nothing, make a will, because you'll save everyone you leave behind a real headache afterwards. So make a will, think about what you want to do with those properties. You might want to put them in trust. That would be very beneficial for tax purposes. And I'm sure if you're not already, you'll be taking some tax advice as well. But there are lots of different types of trusts, which are very, very complicated. But we can easily set up trusts for you so that you're being as tax efficient as you can, so that you're ring fencing properties if you need to, and so that those properties are going to who exactly you want them to go to. when the time comes. And finally, rent recovery. We've all experienced, I'm sure, those awful tenants. I had a situation whereby I had a tenant who wasn't paying the rent. And she had actually been paying rent 3 months at a time. So rather than paying monthly rent, she was paying 3 months. And she was on an AST. So the period of notice that she had to have was 2 periods of 3 months, because that's how she paid rent. It's really unfortunate that the people, when you're working with people that don't know these things, because 6 months rent, when you're running a business that is paid late or lost, makes it really, really difficult. Now, of course, we've all experienced difficulties as landlords with COVID, because we've been very limited on what we can do in terms of execution of evictions. Hopefully that's easing a little bit. But essentially, what's really important in rent recovery is that there are processes that are very stringent that have to be followed. And in order to get to court, we have to make sure that we're following those processes. I was sharing some stories earlier with Eloise and Lavinia, in fact, that I spent quite a lot of my early time as a trainee solicitor acting for banks repossessing houses, which was not as thankless as it sounds, because I had quite a lot of discretion to make decisions on behalf of the bank and to make deals with the people who ended up in court who were unable to pay their mortgages. But I can tell you firsthand that courts favour tenants, because they think that everything should be done to the letter by a landlord. And if you miss one step in the process, they don't take it very lightly at all. So it's really, really important to be following the process, issuing rent demand letters in the right way, issuing the evictions within the right timelines as well, and working to recover assets in line with the protocols of the courts. Apologies, can you hear my dog barking?
We could a little bit.
Don't worry, it's fine. You're at home.
So there are no football gags in this one, Nick.
Thank God for that.
I thought she was going to pop one out there.
Yeah, I did.
Erica, I'm getting a lot of questions through, mainly about, do you do this? Do you do that? Would now be a good time to pull up that process with everything that you do because it's fixed fees? Or do you want to leave that until we've gone through a couple more slides, leave that to the end?
Sorry.
Sorry, Nick, I was just going to say, shall I finish? Because I've just got a couple more slides. In fact, I've got one more slide just on why we're different. And then that's actually it. So if I just do that, and then we can go into the Q&A anyway, would that be okay?
That's brilliant, yeah.
And we can specifically ask some of them questions that have come up. Like one of the questions, oh no, I'll wait, I'll shut up.
That would be great. Yes, I love the Q&A. It's really helpful for everybody. So let's definitely get to the Q&A. So what I want to say now is just a little bit about why us and why we're different. I've explained about my experience and how I have first-hand experience as well with being a landlord, and I've explained my business experience, and I've explained my legal experience. So I think that qualifies me to give some really practical advice. But actually, and hopefully we've demonstrated this here with our little bit of banter, but what I think is really important is that we're actually human beings. We like to think that we're not typical lawyers, and I qualify my lawyers before I bring them on board very, very well, and with a great deal of scrutiny, because not only do I want them to be technically excellent, but I want them to be personable, and I want them to be able to have conversations with people. We don't palm any of our clients off on secretaries. You can always speak to a lawyer. I think that's a really important part of the process when you're instructing a lawyer. I have dealt with lawyers whereby every time I call them, I get through to the secretary, and without any disrespect intended to the secretaries who are excellent, You just want a legal answer to a legal question. So I think that's really important. We're personable. We like to think we have some personality. We might not be for everybody, but most importantly as well, we don't do legal speak. We're normal. And there's a very specific reason that I used no legal speak on this slide, because everybody always says we don't use legalese, which by definition is legalese. So we speak plain English and we bring solutions, not problems. I spoke to a client earlier today and she said, what can you give me, Erica, that no other lawyer is going to give me? And I said, Elizabeth, we do solutions, not problems. And she said, that's my girl, let's do it. So it's really important. I can tell you what the law says till the cows come home, but I would suspect if you're anything like me, you're not interested in what the law says. What you're interested in is how it applies to your situation. And that's how we work. We also have lots of scope. I said that I scrutinise my lawyers to the nth degree, and I really do. I have lawyers across multiple disciplines and multiple jurisdictions. So that means I have lawyers all across the world. I even have a lawyer in Mexico who I work with, which always feels so very exotic. But we resource in a way that we are designed, we deliver against objectives. So if I need people, I get them on board quickly. I have a bank of lawyers that work with me and deliver excellent results every time. And then finally, customer service. When I first came into the legal industry, I was amazed that lawyers didn't focus on customer service. They only ever focused on law. The reason we're changing the world's view of lawyers is because we're all about customer service excellence. So as you work with us, you'll find that you get surveys asking for feedback. Please always be honest. We love to hear from our clients. And it's really important that we can improve our processes. So that will always be open. And now, without further ado, because I know there's lots of them, I'm going to open the floor to questions. We are very shortly, I believe, going to be live on your system. So if you go to your member page, the services page, and then the legal option on the menu, you will find all of our details on there so you can get in touch with us.
Indeed. Yeah,
that was really good. Yeah. And again, how I tripped over Erica and how I was actually introduced to Erica by a guy called Danny that looks after our GDPR. And he introduced me to Erica and said, you're going to get on, because he knew I was looking for someone to look after our members with the legal. But again, it's always about cost. We won't be the cheapest. And I really want, before we show you the prices, we've come up with a solution that does the job to get a good service. That's what I wanted. It wasn't about getting doing conveyancing in a bank where you have one solicitor and 15 legal solicitors under, and you never speak to the solicitor. And I hope you don't mind, Anthony. Anthony had that problem with his.
You were going to bring it up.
Yeah, and again, he was using the in-house solicitor. He walked into an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't go to the solicitor. Solicitor was away playing golf or going away for a couple of days, and it needed a solicitor to deal with that issue. And him and his other half were climbing the ceiling for like 6-7 days. So it is important that what we try to put together is value, and it's making sure that the fees that Erica and her team are charging are there so there's enough money so she can do the job properly and look after you. Yeah, we've negotiated, of course, yeah, but there wasn't much tweaking to be done. There really wasn't. And I'm actually doing my will. The one thing that I've never done is my will, and I'll be open about that. And God, did I get some stick for that one. Again, he's head down, he's growing the LMPG and working really hard. Now with the properties, they're making me do a will. So it's important to make sure that you have someone behind you that can look after you and give you the right advice. And I've spoken to you probably in the last 3 months 4 times, Erica.
Probably a few more than that, if I'm honest.
4 times in the last
Yeah. I let everybody know. Erica's dealing with something for me on a very personal. I've got a parking ticket, yeah, from 2013, and they've taken me to court, and she's dealing with it on a parking ticket in one of these moto places, of all places. 2013. Kids. So she's helping me deal with that. So that's where we are. So Erica, there's loads of questions. Anthony, read some of them great questions out.
Well, I'm hoping that we can get through almost, well, maybe 80% of these in one fell swoop. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the pricing document that we have. And the good thing about this is it is more than just pricing. It is also a list of virtually everything that you guys do. I'm sure there's more to be added into.
A lot more. But one of the questions, well, we have a question here. Do you do with Scottish law? Because you've got to be in Scotland to look after them.
So I have got Scottish lawyers, yes. So I haven't got the Scottish pricing on the price list here, but yes, I do have Scottish lawyers, and please speak to me and we can discuss what you need and how we go about that.
So can you see that?
Yes.
So a lot of the questions that we've had, I'll run through this and you can let me know if it's on here. But this is a 3-page document. Erica, you mentioned that it's all fixed fee already. Where do these fees apply? You mentioned it's not Scotland, so this is England and Wales, presumably?
Yes, it is, correct.
And we've got...
Right, actually, slow down.
I'm just going through because this is the conveyancing, the bit that I couldn't find earlier on. And then there's another bit here as well. So commercial, and then I think there's a freehold and leasehold as well. So I'll just zoom out a wee bit. This will all be on the LMPG website. And I'll run through a couple of questions. So
Please do.
On the contractual documents, do you do JV agreements?
JV agreements?
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. We do joint venture agreements. So that is very much bread and butter business, and yes, we'd be happy to assist with those.
And same question for options and lease option agreements.
Yes, we do.
Lovely. Will's asked, if you've got a letting agency managing your properties, do you still need to register with the ICO for GDPR?
That depends if you ever touch that data yourself. My instinct would be to advise you to say yes. For the £35 fee, it's definitely worth doing, because you are ultimately responsible for that data as the landlord, because you are the data controller. Strictly speaking, you are instructing the letting agency as the processor. So yes, you should still register.
Prem's brought up a really interesting point actually regarding wills. So they've mentioned, I agree with Erica, a reference not having a will. My father passed away, and even though he had a will, it was deemed that he died intestate. I'm still sorting it out now.
Well, firstly, I'm very sorry to hear that your father passed away and that you're still trying to sort the will out as well. That always adds to the loss. So I'm very sorry to hear that. There are a number of very strict legal provisions that govern wills. And one example of that is divorce severs a will. So if you have a will with a partner to whom you are married and then you divorce that person, the will is no longer valid. So you have to do a new will. Similarly, if you have property in another country, for example, that will not be covered under your English will. So you have to have a separate will, otherwise you are partially intestate. So wills are quite tricky documents that have to follow certain procedures. So thank you for raising that point. It's a really, really good one.
Helen's asked, do you deal with neighbour disputes? Neighbour
disputes, we can advise on neighbour disputes, yes.
And Roger's asked about guarantor agreements.
Yes, guarantors. So anything where you're giving a guarantee, debentures as well, if you have a limited company and debentures are involved, and also personal guarantees we do a lot of as well.
I'm going to get what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through pretty much every question at the minute is, do you deal with X? So it's just going to be a checklist of do you deal with effectively. So sale and lease back agreements for commercial properties.
Yes.
Legal packs and offering of conveyancing for properties up at auctions.
Yes.
Transfer of management from an agent to a landlord.
Yes.
A cladding issue with a flat.
Yes, so I assume there's some insurance elements to that as well, I would hope. So, but yes, absolutely.
Mismanagement by management companies.
Yes, so any disputes essentially that arise between you as landlord and organisations that you're instructing, we can absolutely support you on.
And service charge disputes in both residential and commercial settings.
Yes, absolutely. So again, anything management company related, we can advise both the management company and individuals if there are disputes with the management companies.
Alex has asked, can you repeat who the GDPR has to be registered with? I noticed information but didn't get the full name. Yes,
so it's the Information Commissioner's Office. So for short, it's ICO, so ico.org.uk, and they are the regulatory body in the UK for data protection.
Lovely. I had no idea what it stood for. I always just heard ICO, left it at that. I, as a landlord, are waiting for 3 months of rental income from Universal Credit. Do you have any advice?
It's really tricky. Chase them up, be a thorn in their side. I can see Bob nodding on my screen. It's so true. I had a client with an issue with the bank earlier today, and she said, well, who do I go to at the bank? And I said, anybody who'll listen, just chase them up. The people that they don't hear from are the people that they pay last, and that goes for anybody who owes money to you.
Well, Bob's asked a similar question, actually, which is probably why he's nodding there. It says, is it feasible to chase ex-tenants for owings when they are skint?
Well, you can chase them. I would say that, practically speaking, you need to weigh up how much it's going to cost you to chase those tenants for that money versus how much they owe you and whether they're good for it, because there's no use throwing good money after bad.
I agree with
that. Should the vendor register a mixed-use property before sale, or can it be done during the process of sale?
So ideally, you register your mixed use before you have mixed use. So it should always be done before the event. However, if you haven't done it, then just do it as soon as you can.
Bob, so your fee on wills, which is
£95.
£95 slash POA, I presume are dependent on complexity.
It is, because
yes.
I was doing one, with the guy that I was speaking to, and that was going to come out because there was a lot of properties involved and putting things into trust and setting trusts up. And that whole fee was going to be about £600.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So it does depend on the complexity. A basic personal will would be £95 plus VAT. And if it's a mirror will, £95 plus VAT. So for example, my husband and I have mirror wills. But yes, if they become complex with different types of trusts, then they will cost more money, and it very much depends on your setup and what you want to do with your properties and your estate, how we determine what to do with that.
Yeah,
you mentioned earlier on that you're happy with, I think you said yes to almost everything, to be honest, but the guarantor agreements, is that a guarantor agreement for the tenants that you're happy to advise on?
So typically it's when you are purchasing properties for investment, typically personal guarantees are asked for by banks, or certainly in many cases. Often with regards to commercial properties, personal guarantees are being asked for. In this case, I would not be advising the tenants because I would be advising the landlords, and therefore I would be conflicted in advising any tenants. So no, on the face of it, I wouldn't be giving any tenants any advice because you as landlords would be my clients.
Okay, going back to the wills for a second, do you do the will for property overseas, or does that have to be done in the relevant country?
It has to be done in the relevant country or by a lawyer qualified in that country. So for example, my father's actually Spanish, so I'm half Spanish, and my parents have to have a will drafted for their Spanish assets by a Spanish lawyer, and she is actually located in the UK, but she's qualified in Spanish law.
Ah, interesting.
Let's shut you up, Anthony.
I'm not just pulling these questions, mate. They're coming through. All right, I'm going to go one last crack at this guarantor one now, because Roger's getting angry at me. Sorry, I'm not making myself clear. This is a guarantor by a person guaranteeing cover of rent arrears, damage, etc.
So yes, absolutely. So a guarantor agreement for you to receive your rent, I would review. I can draft for you, and ideally I would draft it. But if the tenant provides it, which is very, very unusual and extremely unlikely, then I could look over that and advise on it. I would prefer, if acting for you as landlord, I would draft it for you, because then it says what I want it to protect your interests.
I've got one for you, Erica. I've got one that you're going to say no to. Do you have a contact in West Africa?
Probably is the answer.
Probably.
Okay, you've got one there. Can you draft support living tenancy agreements? Yeah, there's loads.
Yes.
I've gone through the questions now, and I'm sure that they're going to keep piling in. Here we go. Should I put a legal charge on a company I am lending cash to buy a property?
Yes, absolutely. My question to that is, why wouldn't you? You want your interest protected.
Yeah, by the way, one thing I would say, yeah, what you've seen tonight from Erica is a very nice Erica. She's on your side, trust me. I've seen the upside when she's protected me. And she gets rather aggressive. Yeah.
In a nice way, obviously.
Oh, absolutely, in a nice way. Well, what I'm trying to say is that your job is to look after the person who's your client, and which is really, really good. And she's given me and NMPG some really great advice. Otherwise, I wouldn't be saying, Erica, come on board and help us look after our tenants. And again, I've got really nothing to say more than that. I know you. I've spent a lot of time with you, so I've been impressed from day one.
Before we've got another 10 minutes, so I'm sure that the questions are going to filter through. But I thought now might be a good time to introduce your office team as well. So I've got Eloise here. Just so you know, Eloise, I hope you're listening. I'm about to make you a co-host, which is going to give you the ability to unmute yourself and introduce yourself. And I'll just find the other one. Eloise, you there?
Hello.
There we go. Look at that. That was easy.
Hello all.
Hi, Eloise.
Hi.
And Lavinia, I'm going to give you the same permission now.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
Oh, look at that.
Lavinia.
It worked.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Eloise and Lavinia. So Eloise and Lavinia join me in my office, and they are part of my business and legal support team. They're amazing, in fact. So you will no doubt speak to them at some point in the very near future, and I know they'll look after you.
Thanks, Erica. Well done. The presentation was great. Especially our little football symbols.
We worked on that together this afternoon, the three of us. We had to get some football connotation.
It really looked like it needed 3 brains to do, because it was.
Thank you. It did.
Eyebrow stuff.
It took a lot of time.
Sometimes it takes a lot of heads to crack a small nut, Anthony.
Well, Roger mentioned earlier on in the chat actually that he was surprised own goal didn't come up. That seemed like an obvious one.
I did say own goal. That was my first one.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Oh,
Roger, you weren't listening.
Yeah, or I'm reading it incorrectly,
Yeah.
which is usually the case.
Roger Lancaster said, can we send you a tenancy agreement and a guarantor to review, please?
Yes, you can.
And the other one is, so how do we use you?
So you can find my details on the LMPG website on your member page. If you go to the services option on the menu, on the top navigation bar, I believe, and then on that drop down menu, you'll find legal, and I am under that column.
Have you seen Anthony's face?
Why is he?
It's not live yet. I'll put it live tomorrow. So long as as long as we're happy. I mean, I'm really happy. I'm sure these members are going to be looked after. So let's get that live. Put you on there, and yeah, we'll start sending landlords your way.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you all.
Until then, could you just reshare that contact details slide as well?
Yes, I can.
And then everybody's got a camera. Just take a picture of it.
Print screen.
Yeah. Well, okay. Print screen.
There we go.
Lovely. Well, it looks to me.
Right. One thing before we go. How many people are on it? 57. I've got a little treat for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now get ready because you've all got to type something in the question. So I'll give you 30 seconds to get ready to type because I'm going to ask you a question, and whoever gives me the first question, the answer to this question, gets a free membership. And if you're new, you'll get free membership. If you don't, and you're coming up for renewal in the next 12 months, we will give you a free renewal.
We've already got some answers, Nick, before the questions come through. We've got Harry Kane in 2-0 to England.
All I want to know is put the score down of the England game tonight. And who scores the goal? Who scores the first goal?
Here we go.
Yeah.
Scores the first goal as well.
Yeah, who scores the first goal? And we got, can we save that, Anthony? Because I
Yeah,
don't want to lose it.
the chat comes back to me tomorrow anyway. So
Okay, fine. Okay. Has anybody put Denmark? Because I want to see.
All gone England's way. Someone's put Maguire to Scotland. Oh, wait, hold on. 2-1 to Denmark. Grealish, Sterling. Oh, we're getting a lot of Denmarks now. You've riled them up.
And it's a free membership or a renewal. We don't just not look after our members. Can you share it, Anthony? Can we share that? See how many people are up. I thought that'd be good.
I can't share Zoom things on my screen now.
Oh, fine. Okay. Okay. Brilliant. Now, just a little bit of fun. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, let's talk about what we're doing next week.
Yep. We're doing Grono.
Yeah, I thought you'd forgotten there.
Oh, I haven't forgotten. But before, Erica, honestly, thank you so much. Yeah. I don't think this will be the last presentation I'll ever do for us, because what we try to do is pick a subject next time and just home in on that and talk about conveyancing maybe, or whatever subject the members want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Very happy to do that. It'd be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
And honestly, you two lovely ladies, thank you for coming on board and saying hi to everybody.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Good. So we are now going to be talking about Grono next week. Okay.
Yeah.
Anthony, you can do this one.
I thought so. Yeah, so we introduced Grono, 2 years ago, just as we brought Juicen on board. And with these guys, we thought we'd go direct. These guys are famous for their composite decking. They also do artificial grass, but we've not really spoken about them since. They have since then introduced a hell of a lot of new products. I had a meeting with them a couple of months back and I said, well, we've got to get you in front of the membership because you're a completely different company. So you'll have noticed, undoubtedly, because everyone reads all my emails that I send out, that they've joined us with the special offers this month. And they're going to start stepping up a little bit more, resurfacing and getting in front of the landlord market to support the landlord market. So really looking forward to have those on this time next week.
Yeah, and just also, Auntie, we had a great meeting with Magnet on some of the things that are going to be introduced over the next 6 months to help with the process and getting designs done. But that will follow by the end of the month. Some of the things we'll be making some announcements once Andy and Jill have got a couple of issues sorted out. And again, I've got a big meeting with Juicens tomorrow. And one of the things on top of my subject is installation board. So we'll be talking to them about some of the product lines that we need to be presenting to our members. But Erica, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And guess what time? We're finishing 2 minutes early.
First time we've ever finished early.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
first time ever. All I'm going to say is I hope we win. Goodbye, everybody. Lovely talking to everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.